name's Alison Ensel and we've lived here for 11 years. This is Foxfield in the Gretton Fields, and we've been slowly changing it into a permaculture demonstration centre. We've now got land status through the Permaculture Association to demonstrate permaculture techniques. Welcome. Now we're at the rear of the house, and this is quite a sun trap. It's obligatory in permaculture to have your herb garden right outside your back door, so you're always available to go and get your herbs at the last minute. But we try and encourage as many insects as possible into our garden. And here is a simple technique. It's an old spice rack that's been filled with bamboo and hosepipe to create a bee hotel. I'd like to show you the greenhouse we've put on the south side of our house to take advantage of the solar gain. Tucked away in this wasted space, we've put in this greenhouse. We used the old windows from when we replaced the windows upstairs, and we kept them and reconfigured it all so we could make this greenhouse. This is our old shower door. The whole thing was designed to fit that. And in here we take advantage of this big wall that was not being used, was wasted, and all that heat. We're growing peaches. I've grown all my peppers and chilies in here. It's also where the engine room of all my seedlings for my vegetable area. And the reason we have this water butt here is it takes the grey water from our shower, from our bedroom ensuite, and in the winter and the spring I can hold that warm water in overnight. I can put a timer on here that holds the water in, and that acts as a mini radiator to just keep this area frost free. And in those really cold winters that we had where it was -10, this was just above freezing. So it stays up in here, and then when it trickles out, it goes out through a hose, out through the wall to a mini reed bed system that we've created outside. That's made out of old pallets and old pond liner, and it's slightly angled so that water will trickle slowly through. And then out of that it goes onto the ground where we've got a mini coppice system, hazel coppice. Up here you can see one of the diverters that we have. It's a big diverter that will take 90% of the downpour water. It's up so high so that we can move the water uphill just by using this pipe is filled with water, and just when it rains it can push water uphill. So it's in a useful place. So what we have is a very long, thin garden. It's about 1 acre in total, but it's very narrow. And we've divided it into a series of zones that you have in permaculture. Close to the house here we have our recreational space. It's more of a traditional family garden, which we've been renovating to include more bee-friendly plants, wildlife-friendly plants, and to create a relaxing space for us. So permaculture is not all hard work. This is actually a hot tub, which my family has christened a warm tub. It's actually made from an old trampoline and from old aviary wire and old fencing, pond liner. And what it does is, in the winter, we use it, the trampoline here with its netting on, to allow water to come in and act as a rainwater store. Pump that up to our water storage tanks and use that. But in the summer, when we're going to have a nice heat wave, and when we know we're going to have friends round or something like that, we can fill it and pump water through this reconditioned solar thermal panel. And then if we need any extra heat, we have built here a rocket stove that takes waste wood, all the trimmings from our hedgerow that we don't use for anything else, that's too spiky to be composted. We burn that, and it's got the ability to heat water through a copper coil that's in the chimney. And because with a rocket stove what you get is a very furious fast burn, you actually heating and cooking the gases that come off the wood, and that's what's burning. So you get a very efficient burn, a very hot burn. You don't get any smoke, and the water that's pumped through that gets very, very hot, and that goes back into the tank. So we have a cycling system. I can also boil a kettle or heat a pan on the top here if I'm so inclined. I actually designed it so I could do that, because I spin wool and I'd like to be able to dye without having the smells of natural dyes inside the house that can be a bit stinky. So where I'm standing is part of a project to develop a chicken and duck forage system, which has not really been done on a domestic scale, as far as I know. I'm growing a lot of food that will be a successional for planting for chickens and ducks to forage themselves. I'm also growing some grain and things like sunflower seeds and fruit crops, just to give them a more balanced and enriched diet, and also to provide more wildlife space, more leaf litter for grubs and things, and just to give them a more diverse range to live in. So in permaculture you make use of any outputs, and dirty duck water is one of the waste materials that I need to use in my system. So I've sited it here so I can bail out water into my polytunnel, but also it can go onto this willow coppice, and you can see the height of this. This has been coppice this year, but it's grown tremendously even since then. It loves dirty duck water, and we then cut it for, I make baskets, but also we cut it to use in the round in our wood burning stove. So this is one of the 3,000 litre tanks that we use for storing water. It's up here so that we can take the rainwater that we've moved uphill, and we put it sited, the first one here, so I can use the water in the duck pond and into the polytunnel. It's up on bricks so we can take use of gravity to feed the soaker hose system in the polytunnel. But also what we can do is, by balancing the taps at the bottom with a hose pipe, we can then make 2 other storage tanks up the garden work as one, and they can go up and together as one system. I've mentioned the polytunnel a few times and how it's sited to take advantage of the duck water. We also collect the rainwater from the roof of the polytunnel by having this extra sheet that's battened in down on the side here and battened in on the other side, and this collector. We then move the water into 2 water butts at the top of the system. So these are 2 water butts that are raised up off the ground to take the water that trickles in, and then they're joined together to act as one system, and the weight of that feeds a soaker hose system by gravity, so that when it rains outside, the polytunnel is watered on the inside without me having to do anything. So you may think that this polytunnel looks rather overgrown and a bit exuberant, but that's the way permaculture growing works. Here I've got some broad beans that have been planted over winter and they're cropping now. And what I'll do is I'll just cut them and let them drop on the ground after I've harvested the beans, and then I'll plant some more tomatoes through on that side. Another crop of tomatoes on that side to take advantage of the nitrogen fixing. I let everything seed, so here we have some giant red mustard that's going to go to seed and drop seed. I've had rocket going to seed. I also encourage certain weeds in here like chickweed, because they act as a nice protection layer and keep the soil moist beneath. People think that weeds compete for moisture, but actually they keep the heat from evaporating the top, so it keeps it moist underneath. You can see I have tomatoes there on that side doing really well on the soaker hose system. They're not top watered, they're top fed, but they're not top watered, so that keeps the moisture down in here, stops it getting very blighty or very mildewy, because it's always watered from below, and that encourages your roots to go deep and not to stay at the surface like surface watering does. Here you'll see an unusual edging made from old wine bottles turned upside down. They've got their caps on and they've been hammered in and 3/4 filled with water. The reason for that is they're acting as little mini storage heaters for winter crops. So when you have a really sunny winter day, the heat is stored in the water in the bottle, and then that releases slowly overnight and keeps the temperature balanced in here. You're probably thinking that this is a very messy garden, but that's part of the permaculture approach. You try and grow more in harmony with nature, so you don't dig and you allow more perennials and you mulch everything, but you also encourage a certain amount of weeds that have beneficial effects. But also I'm going a further stage. As well as growing a lot of perennials, I let things self-seed, and because I've discovered that when things self-seed, they're much hardier and much more likely to grow faster with more vigour than things that you've planted out yourself. So with permaculture, one of the basic techniques is how to break in a really weedy bit of ground or an old lawn or something like that without digging. And this is the technique that is commonly used. It's called the sheet mulch. So you lay down cardboard, open boxes over a weedy area. You tip on all kitchen waste or compost, whatever you've got, and then another layer of something like straw or hay or lawn mowings to keep the weeds from setting on top. And then you plant potatoes through by cutting a hole in the cardboard, putting a potato underneath. Potatoes grow up, create more shading. The worms come up and under the light barrier, that's the cardboard and all this debris, and they pull everything down. So when I lift these potatoes in the autumn, I'll have a cleared area to replant. But I actually encourage a lot of weeds in this area, and people don't actually realise when they see that all this sticky weed or goose grass or cleavers, some people call it, is actually a crop. I'm cropping it here for my chickens and ducks who go mad for it. Very nutritious. And then when it's died back, I will be planting pumpkins in this area. We grow a lot of perennial crops in permaculture, and these are globe artichokes that we're going to start eating as well, but I leave a lot for the bees because the bumblebees absolutely love artichokes, and they look so beautiful. And here, this is a bit of a laugh, this is my washing line bean cave. You know how when you've created a wigwam of beans, all the beans are on the inside and you miss a load because you can't get inside the wigwam? Well, here's your answer, an old washing line. Strings tied down to some old fence posts. The beans grow up and all the beans hang down, and then you go underneath and pick them from underneath. Creates a lovely bean cave. These bobbins here are from an old cotton mill where they were giving them away free. And I've put them on here because last year the voles ate through all my beans, and this is just a barrier to stop the voles eating the stems of my beans. These are our PV panels that aren't on the roof of our house because it's taken up with a solar thermal panel. It's here and with the best sun that we could possibly get, and it's transported back to the house, and we're on the feed-in tariff system, so we get quite a bit of money back from that. The reason we've got strawberries growing underneath them is because I wanted to associate a crop that would be low growing but also could take advantage of the water that was running off, and strawberries do like quite a bit of water. So they get a lot of rainwater, and actually they're doing really well. They're actually getting a bit too tall here. This is our wildlife pond that's situated in my vegetable area, so to encourage beneficial wildlife to come. We have newts and frogs and toads, and even grass snake I've seen in there the other day, probably eating all the newts, but there we go, that's good wildlife. So because in permaculture you see nothing as waste, it's always an unutilised resource, this is my toilet. It's actually more like a tree bog than a compost toilet because there is a hole going through with a seat that's got a separator on it, so I can separate out urine, and I use that diluted on fruiting crops like raspberries and fruit bushes and things like that. And then when the hole is full, we move the whole system along, dig another hole, and then we plant a crop on top of the hole. And this is a poplar that was planted about 2.5 years ago, just as a stick, didn't even have roots on it, it was just a bare stick stuck in the ground. And as you see, it's gone crazy, loves it. And what we will do is this winter we'll coppice that and get smaller sticks from it. As well as the outdoor loo, this is the latest crazy idea. It's a living shower cubicle made from willow. So this has only just gone in recently. When all this grows, I'm going to plait it all in at the sides. And next to it over there, you'll see we've got some two solar panels that were given to us. And we can get mains water up to this level. And by just trickling mains water through these panels on a sunny day and going up to a rose above in the shower, we'll be able to offer solar showers to any potential visitors that come to do courses or workshops here. We're now right at the end of the garden, and this was an established orchard already. We've planted some extra things, and particularly some soft fruit in amongst the trees, and let it go wild really, and actually encourage wildlife by leaving things unmowed and let weeds take over. One of the things that's absent from a permaculture garden is the traditional composting bins, because in nature nothing actually transports compost materials to one place and then leaves it there and turns it and then moves all the compost back. Here though we have a brash pile that's here long term, that also I put any perennial weeds that I don't want to put directly onto my kitchen beds. And this rots down very slowly, but it also acts as a nesting site, as a place for beetles and spiders. And also when I go underneath it, eventually, by just turning the whole thing over after a couple of years, the chickens then root around in the bottom and take advantage and make it into a dust bar. It is quite woody, but I sieve it, and anything that comes through is quite a rough compost that will have weed seed in it. So I only use it for things where I'm planting big seedlings like courgettes or something that you know what a weed seed looks like. One thing that we don't put on here is any grass. The grass is treated as a crop, and it goes as a mulch directly onto our no-dig beds. So this is our wood-burning range cooker. It's not like a traditional range that in this country where it takes a long time to heat up and then you keep it going and then it takes a long time to lose heat. It's a fast burn and a fast cool cooker primarily, but it's got this system that allows you to decide whether you want to just heat the top plate, and you've got two choices. You can either heat the whole of the top plate or you can heat that half and the oven. Or if you want to take this extra platform out, you can then heat water using the back boiler as well. So you've got the option in the winter, or when you haven't had any sun, to top up your solar thermal system, which we've got on the roof up here, with the heat, the residue heat from when you're cooking. It's very good. You can have 60 degrees heat if you've had the oven on for a couple of hours. I love it, and one of the things we love about it is that you can use quite a lot of waste wood on it. We put most of our coppice wood from the hedgerows and things in there, and because you're cooking in the round, it'll burn very fast and very quickly. So with this system I can light the oven, peel my potatoes. By the time I peel the potatoes, it's ready to start boiling potatoes on here. It takes a bit longer to heat the oven up. You have to be about half an hour, 40 minutes ahead of yourself to get the oven up to temperature. We love it.